So today we have two goals. Our focus is on first remembering the brave men and women who gave their lives in service for our country and for our freedom. And the second is to recognize our purpose in carrying on the qualities that these people demonstrated through their service. For me, Memorial Day is not just a date on the calendar, it's an invite for all of us to reflect and honor the lives that were sacrificed for our freedom. Growing up, I remember everyone putting out a flag. Our whole neighborhood, every house had a little flag holder, and everyone would put their flag out. And you could drive down any street, and there was an American flag on every house. And I remember the men coming over on the holiday, and all of them talking about those they left behind when they served in World War II, or the stories of and their experiences of serving, so that all of us kids would remember what this weekend was about. Of course, a lot of times they were speaking in Armenian, and we'd have to, use our dual language ability to try to make sense of it. But we learned so much just listening and watching. And for me, it was very reflective experience. But with the years passing, and as I've gotten older, I have recognized that this holiday has become so much about retail sales and people getting away for 3-day weekends. And I get that, and it's wonderful. But our younger generations truly cannot often tell the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And that's something we're responsible for, helping them understand. And as more time passes, Memorial Day, for me personally, has become a time to also remember other loved ones who passed. This past Friday was the anniversary of my dad's passing, and I remember Memorial Weekend, his celebration of life service taking place. And I remember thinking it was so appropriate that it was happening on Memorial Weekend. So, my thoughts this weekend were to make sure my brother put the flowers on my parents' graves because they're both in a veteran gravesite. But taking time to express gratitude for those who lost their lives actually helps us to manage grief in general. We remember names and the stories and acknowledge the blessings and the freedoms we have. That's when we're actually paying tribute to a loss that really can't be measured. I can't help but think about Bill Bellis, who's here, Billy Bellis Jr. He, as you know, we had Mary's picture up last weekend, and he just lost his iconic mom. But again, timing of all of this is a chance for us to grieve and to let our hearts open up and to keep the special memories alive. There's also a very spiritual aspect to this holiday, from my eyes, that can help shape our lives in a more meaningful way. And it begins with us asking ourselves these questions. First of all, what can we learn from true sacrifice? What is it? What can we learn from it? And how are we giving that kind of sacrifice? How might we deepen our gratitude and develop more humility or refine our values? Is there a way that we could awaken ourselves to greater responsibility, to be compassionate, and to have more moral seriousness about us? And ultimately, how can we awaken to the gift of life, the needs of others and our duty of serving those who trust us and need us. It's just not enough from my eyes for us to admire those who developed courage and bravery and paid that price. We can only honor them by considering how that sacrifice moves us into living a more appreciative and awakened life. Now, I don't know about you, but I think it's easy to get caught up in all the day-to-day life stuff and to forget how lucky we truly are. We're free to drive around. We're free to make choices. We can go wherever we want. How often are we even thinking about that until a weekend like this? But there are so many lessons we can learn, like love. Let's start with love. So, love is truly revealed in sacrifice. What we do for others, how we do for others, and our willingness to do without expectation. And our culture often speaks of love more in emotional or sentimental terms. But life really provides a much deeper lesson about love. Because love gives, love protects, and love serves, and it perseveres. And on Memorial Day, we honor those whose service reflected that willingness to love, to protect, to serve, and to persevere, and to give everything for the good of others. I saw a news clip. I didn't see the story yet. I want to, about a group of men who went back to Normandy this past week to be present for where they invaded Normandy back in World War II. And my dad was there too. And I remember just hearing the man, all I heard of that clip was him saying, "I'm the only one who went home amongst my platoon." And what that must have felt like to be the only survivor. And he describes some very spiritual thing that happened to him. And for a moment, it was just a moment, but he said it was what absolutely kept him going. So once I learn more, I'll tell you. But I love the idea that this is about us thinking more in that same spirit of protecting others and letting go of our need for any selfishness or indifference or resentment, and instead comforting others when love is needed and people are grieving. And even if we don't know them, just listening to them can be enough. The second thing I think we can learn is gratitude, because it's more than just a feeling. True gratitude can change the way we live our lives. It makes us gentler people and more humble. It helps us be more responsible and more aware of the blessings that we often take for granted. But gratitude, real gratitude, requires action. To be thankful for someone's sacrifice, it's not enough just to speak those respectful words once a year. It means that we need to live in a way that honors what we were given and take action through being more faithful people who know how to step up and help others, to be more committed to our own relationships, to be grateful for the people we have in our lives. Many of you heard about what happened to Kyle Busch, the NASCAR driver, this week. 2 weeks of being sick, and a 41-year-old man is gone, leaving 2 children and a wife behind. Okay, and one of the last things he said at a race was, "You never know when it's going to be your last one." Maybe we need to take our lives more seriously and pay more attention to how we're showing up every day. Because Memorial Day can also teach us the proper response to sacrifice, which is not passive appreciation, it is purposeful living. How many of us can say, I live on purpose? I live with purpose. Versus, I get up every day and the same grind and just do the same things. How many of us say that? We all do. At some point in the week, that's what life looks like. But let's just think about that for a minute. I had to turn my whole thought process around this weekend. First, feeling like this strange kind of sadness on Friday and trying to understand what was bothering me. And I figured it out, which was super helpful. But then my mind went to, well, church and a graduation and a party. And oh, by the way, I'm working in New York 3 days this week, and I've got a lot going on in my head. And then I just paused and was like, okay, let's start again, Nancy. So, how wonderful you get to go and be with the people you love the most on Sunday morning. Second of all, how lucky are you were invited to 2 events? And third, how lucky are you that at my age, I'm still traveling for my corporate job and people really still find me useful? So once I said all of that to myself, my whole attitude changed. But I was just in the, like everybody else, in the to-dos. You know, this. Freedom for us is a profound gift. That is the lesson for us today. It is one of the most important, and it carries this moral responsibility we have. Because the freedoms we have make us more compassionate. They can provide greater integrity. They help us demonstrate greater good for the rest of the world. But if we don't take that seriously, then we're not being responsible. And as we mature, we actually learn that freedom and responsibility go together. It's not about pursuing our own interests. That already happens. It's about doing what's right for the world and for ourselves. It's about seeking justice for all, protecting the most vulnerable, becoming people of moral character who don't walk by a travesty and say, I don't know what's going on over there, who actually ask if help is needed. This is when we start paying attention to the fact that this weekend is deeply personal for so many. There are parents and spouses and children and siblings and friends who live every day with the absence of their loved ones. So one of the most humane things we can do is notice that grief, honor it, and meet it with a tender heart. And while all the ceremonies that are going on in the public displays of flags are there to honor the fallen, and yes, they're helpful, they don't help the grieving. What helps the grieving is us being present as a quiet voice, listening, being patient, being willing to help those who are having a difficult time this weekend. And it's important for us to understand that hope, having hope, does not erase memory. But it's also important to understand while Memorial Day is very solemn for many people, it is not hopeless. Hope is what transforms the way memories are carried by us. And hope is our act of courage when we refuse to surrender to being in despair. when we catch ourselves and recognize we're going down a deep, dark path that we don't need to go down. And when we do what Mary said, surrender to God, surrender to the divine, knowing that our purpose is still in front of us. We want to be led toward hope, the kind that doesn't deny our grief, but helps us carry that grief with strength and compassion and grace. Because remembering is an act of honor. Real people with real families, with real dreams, laid down their lives. And remembering teaches our next generation that freedom has a history, that courage has a cost, and that gratitude should have roots. I remember the first time Jeffrey and I took Melody to the gravesite down in St. Pete where his parents' ashes are. And she saw for the first time all the flags up over Memorial Weekend and was so curious why. And we had this amazing conversation. And every year after that, she would get the little flags out and put them around the house. And so she was young. She was 8 years old. But she started to understand why people were out there putting all those flags up. It's good for our kids to know. As we celebrate tomorrow, whatever you're doing this weekend, my hope for us is that we will be changed by who and what we choose to carry forward in memory, that we will choose service over selfishness and gratitude over entitlement. And ultimately, that we would become the kind of people who use freedom wisely, speak about it with gratitude, and live humbly and love generously. And maybe, just maybe, each of us then would commit ourselves to living in ways that heal versus wound, encourage versus tear down, and bless rather than burden. So we can live as awakened as possible and be thankful and more committed to living for something greater than ourselves. Let's review our lessons for today. Remembering with gratitude and purpose helps us embrace the following: that love is revealed in sacrifice, protects, serves, and perseveres. That gratitude is more than a feeling, that it's demonstrated through our actions. That freedom is truly a profound gift. It's not an excuse for us to just think about ourselves. And number 4, that hope does not erase memory, that it transforms how memory is carried. The affirmation for today is, I remember with gratitude and purpose. Let's say that together. I remember with gratitude and purpose. And this is a great quote from someone I don't know. Does gratitude spare us from sorrow, sadness, grief, and pain? No, but it does soothe our feelings. It provides us with a greater perspective on the very purpose and joy of life. So let's take a moment and just pause and say, thank you, God, for the freedoms bestowed upon us by the people who were willing to fight on our behalf. We are grateful for the legacy of all who have moved on before us. We carry their stories in our hearts. And we remember that their passing occurs a second time when we forget to tell the good stuff about their lives. And so it is. Amen.